Greetings, everyone. I want to show you something that I saw in a photo. Okay, so I want to show you a photo, and I'm going to explain what I see in this photo, and I think you'll be able to see it too. But before I show you the photo, I have to do a backstory with it. So please be patient. It's just going to take a little bit. I'm going to try to make it as short as I can, but there is going to be some extended time on this video. So let me just get right to it. And I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, okay? I was a Jehovah's Witness for 7 years. And Jesus opened my eyes to what was going on in that organization, and he woke me up and saved me out of it. So he actually had me write this book, Saved by Grace, a Gift from God. Okay, and it's all about when I was a Jehovah's Witness and how I started my journey in there and how God saved me out of it. So toward the end, when I was Jesus was opening my eyes, I started to get a foul smell, and nobody could smell this smell but myself. And it was like a real strong odor. It smelled like a goat. And actually the scripture was coming alive in Matthew, where it says God separating the sheep and the goats. So that scripture was coming alive, and I could smell that I was among goats, okay? Not God's people. Okay, so I'm going to read, I have to read some of the book to you, and I hope you really enjoy it. So I'm going to read because it's going to show you. I really need you to really empathize, if you will, on what I was feeling and what I smelled and how I felt, so that you can get the gist of the next photo that I'm going to show you, okay? And the importance of it and how it really hit me, okay, when I saw this photo recently. Okay, so I'm going to start in this book in chapter 1. It's called A New Beginning. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole book, but I'm going to read 2 passages. I'm going to read, well, they're not really passages, but I'm going to read pages 17 through 23, and after that, I'm going to read pages 220 to 226, okay? So just relax, enjoy. You might want to get a cup of tea or, just relax, okay? And enjoy. Okay, this is called A New Beginning. This is chapter 1 of my book. It was a dark and eerie night, a night like no other. I was surrounded by unfamiliar territory and enduring unforeseen occurrences. The only hint of reality that could be pulled from the confusion in my mind was that my children were the most important people in my life, and their safety was first and foremost. Knowing my fear of sleeping with him, Len suggested I sleep with my daughter, Alicia, in the locked master bedroom. Yes, I'll do that, I said to Len. Let's go, Alicia, upstairs to Mommy's room. You can sleep with Mommy, I instructed in a consoling voice, but who was I trying to console, her or myself? He kindly said goodnight and went to bed in Alicia's room, bringing with him a pair of jeans, a shirt, and sneakers. I remember wondering, why would he need these things? He closed the door behind him and went to bed. I went with Alicia upstairs. She lay down, but I didn't. I couldn't sleep, not even in a padlocked room. After Alicia fell asleep, I restlessly went downstairs. I was overwhelmed with fear for my children. I knew I had to watch over them all through the night. In the wee hours of the morning, still in my jeans, I paced the floor in a panicking state, going upstairs to check on Alicia and back downstairs to check on the boys. Everyone lay asleep peacefully. I walked over to the rotating bookshelf that Len had made, which stood in the dining room. I took one of the bound volumes, which are a compilation of Watchtower magazines written by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Brooklyn, New York, also known as Bethel, and sat on the couch with it in my hand. I sat there frightened, diligently looking up information that might help me unlock the mystery. It wasn't of much help, though. Its writings only made me more confused. I know that there was something drastically wrong, but it wasn't tangible. I couldn't discern what was happening. I then clutched the Bible and began reading. I turned to the book of Psalms for consoling. As I read, my eyelids became heavier and heavier. I thought to myself, no, I must stay awake. Our very lives depend on it. Oh God, please help me, I murmured. Determined to stay awake, I got up and began throwing darts at the dartboard that hung above the couch in the living room. Then I started to sing kingdom melodies in hopes of it serving as a protection from the evil forces that lurked about. But as I sang, I became more and more distressed. In a desperate attempt to soothe my soul, I played Watchtower tapes. Within a few minutes, I edgily turned it off, as it had no comforting effect whatsoever. All of a sudden, I heard a tapping noise coming from Alicia's bedroom where Len lay asleep. There was a tap, then a pause for about 15 seconds, then another tap. This continued for about 10 minutes. It sounded like a blunt object gently hitting a hard surface. I got the feeling that he was being summoned from someone outside. Hesitant with alarm, I called out to him from the living room, trying to keep a safe distance from the bedroom. Len, are you in there? I carefully asked. I got no response. I slowly walked toward the bedroom door, and again, I called out to him. Len, what are you doing? I asked. I was trying to sleep, he mumbled. I peeked in and saw him lying there. I walked over to him and laid beside him, looking for some sort of comfort, and allowed him to rest his arm across my waist. As I lay there, I began to smell a strong stench. It was a stench that you would expect to encounter if you were locked in a barn with a drove of goats. The atmosphere became so dense with this foul odor that it consumed my lungs entirely. Although the smell was unbearable, I lay in his arms from sheer exhaustion. However, I would not fall asleep. I just knew that something terrible would happen if I did. Coming to my senses again, I rose up shortly after and went back to the living room to sit on the couch. 5 o'clock in the morning crept up. The dawn was breaking, and I knew I could not stay there another night. I kept thinking about something that Gerard Bowman, one of the elders, had said that night before at the Kingdom Hall. He stressed that Len and I should communicate with one another. The word communicate kept echoing in my head. He's right, I thought. I do need to communicate, but with my children, not Len. At that point, I felt as though my children and I were being pulled apart from one another. We had always been close up until then. Needless to say, I went to find Alicia in my bedroom. I woke her up and whispered, Alicia, something is not right here. If we have to leave very quickly, just do as I say, okay? Okay, Mommy, she answered in a half-sleeping state. Then I went to the boys' room and attended to them individually. I alternately sat on each of their beds, woke them up, and repeated the same thing to them that I stressed to Alicia. They both nodded. Okay, Mommy. There, that's good, I thought, as I felt a measure of comfort. I've communicated with my children, so they will be prepared if we suddenly have to leave. We must stick together. While everyone was still asleep, I frantically took some of my clothes from the closet, not really grabbing anything that made too much sense. I certainly couldn't make a complete outfit out of any of it. Then I went out to the car. As I stepped outside, I stood on the porch and looked at my surroundings. It appeared to be slightly hazy. I glanced to the left. There stood Len's parents' house, lifeless, so quiet. They built their house on the same lot. I then gazed up at the chimes. There was an unusual-looking one hanging from a tree that was beside the garden to the right of the house. The strings were tangled and had small bells hanging from them. I also looked at the one hanging from the top of the porch. It looked like a miniature umbrella with little stick-figured rods hanging from it. Everything was still and quiet, a condition that I mimicked for a moment. The air was saturated with the scent of something that had been burning. I cautiously stepped off the porch and walked over to Len's car, a maroon Acura, and put my clothes in the trunk. After I accomplished my mission of getting my clothes in the car, I scurried into the house like a cat on a hot tin roof, looking behind me to make sure no one was going to jump out and grab me. Once in the house, I locked the door behind me. Again, I went to see Len in Alicia's bedroom. He was still lying there, and the stench was still as strong as ever. It permeated the entire house. But I, being in a tired and frightened state, didn't hesitate to lie in his arms once again. "Len, I didn't sleep all night," I said. "I know, hun," he responded. We talked a bit, and as I sat up beside him, weak and drained of all energy, I captured my reflection in the mirror that was over the bureau to the right of the bed. It wasn't me. I looked so dazed. I felt as though my spirit, my soul was being taken from me. I felt as though I was falling deeper and deeper into some sort of pit. I looked down at my wedding ring with an empty, overwhelming sadness, and I said, "I hate all these material things. They don't make you happy. I'd rather be living in my mother's basement." Len just looked at me and said in a monotone voice, "You become a slave to these things." Now the children were getting ready for school. The boys, Ron, 14 years old, and Mandy, 13, went out to catch the bus. Alicia, who was 11, was ready to be driven to school. Len dropped her off, as he did most every morning. While he was gone, I was contemplating whether I should go to work or not, since I was tired from not getting any sleep the previous night. When Len returned home from dropping Alicia off, I said to him, "Len, I think I'm going to stay home today. I'm really tired. What do you think?" I asked. "Should I go to work?" "I know how you feel because I was tired the other day and I didn't want to go to work, but I think that you should go," he responded. "I need to get some sleep. I really ought to stay home. I won't be worth anything at work," I rebutted. "But I don't feel like staying here by myself all day either," I added in a whiny voice. "Go over to my mother's and sleep." "Go over to my mother's and sleep there," he suggested. I quickly responded, "No, I don't want to go over there." He said, "My parents are going to Natick to see my sister today. Go with them and you can sleep in the back seat of the car." I responded again, very firmly, "No, I don't want to go." I felt that his parents played a part in all that was happening. Therefore, they were the last individuals with whom I wanted to spend time. Len poured himself a bowl of cereal and sat at the dining room table. I stood at the kitchen sink with him in view. He was sitting there perfectly erect with his head slightly bowed and his hands folded together in prayer over his meal. I stood at a distance and stared at him intently, studying his mannerisms and trying to read his thoughts. I wondered to whom he was praying. It can't be the only true God. He doesn't even love God, I thought. I could sense that it was an empty gesture and he was just going through the motions. He ended his prayer and began to eat. I continued staring. He never looked over at me, but he knew I was there, staring. All of a sudden, in a nonchalant, non-caring manner, he called me over to him. "Alice, come here," gesturing with his hand for me to come over to him. Still, he didn't look at me. I walked over to him, frightened, not knowing what to expect. As I stood beside him, he remained seated at the table. He wrapped his right arm around my waist and continued eating with his left hand. As he tried to be affectionate toward me, I became rigid and very standoffish. I was trembling inside from his insaneness. He became irritated because I wouldn't reciprocate his affection, which was a mere pretense. He played a role as if he were on stage. I could feel numbness from his very being. He asked me, "What do you think we can do to make this work?" He was referring to our marriage. I answered, looking down at him in a penetrating tone, "You should know." I wanted him to sense that I was on to him, that I knew he was involved in something very harmful, and he would have to break free from it to save our marriage. I do believe he got my point. He immediately responded in a calculating, cold, harsh, but at the same time composed voice that lacked any and all emotion. "Honey, look at that bush out there," throwing his head up, throwing up his chin in the direction he wanted me to look. The bush was located in the front yard, which we could see through the large bay window that was in the dining room, directly in front of us. There were 3 bushes close together that almost formed one bush. It was June 1995. Therefore, the blossoms were in full bloom. Little white flowers covered the bushes like a white velvet blanket. It was beautiful. I responded, "Which bush?" "The white one," he answered. I said, "Yes." He continued in the same cold, calculating voice. "That was one big bush. I chopped it down. I chopped it into 3. I thought it was dead, but I planted it anyway. It was alive and grew." Now I was getting his point. I knew he was referring to me, and what was initially a beautiful tree to look at turned into the little shop of horrors. In a state of amazement and shock, I asked, "Is that bush supposed to be me?" He put his head down and began to laugh. Looking back up at me, he said sarcastically, "No, we need you. The kids need you. They each need a piece of you." Then he began patting me on the back, still looking up at me, and said, "I'm going to take good care of you," emphasizing you. Ironically, I had 3 children, and they each needed a piece of me, according to Len. Did he want me to fear him chopping me up into 3 pieces and burying me like he did the tree? Well, if so, it worked, because that became my biggest fear at that very moment. He left me with chills down my spine and the gripping question of, how did I get trapped in this nightmare? Oh yes, I remember how it all began. And then I continue on to the very beginning. That was toward the end of Jesus opening my eyes and saving me out of there. Okay? Now I'm going to read pages 220 to 226. And this is continuing on beyond what happened at that house and what Len said to me, and just the days that progressed after that that completely got me out. So, 220 to 226. Okay. Well, it's the bottom of 220, so I'm really reading the very last paragraph, so it's not a whole page, so it won't be too long, okay? But it's really important for you to get the gist, because this goes back to the picture that I saw recently, and this is regarding that goat stench, okay? And this is all when I was a Jehovah's Witness. He was a Jehovah's Witness, and I married in that organization, and they set me up totally, and this is what transpired, okay? Len was well aware of my feelings. So, knowing my fear of sleeping with him, he suggested I sleep with my daughter, Alicia, in the locked master bedroom. And you know the rest. This is the night I was referring to in the beginning of this letter to you. What you don't know, though, is how it all ended. Well, here you go. I have written this to you because Jesus loves you, and he has put into my heart and instructed me to share this, so that you may be aware, so that you may be comforted, and so that you may be saved. Now, I can continue. Friday, June 2nd, 1995. As I am sure you remember, I was standing over Len with locked knees and paralyzed in fear after his bush analogy. Right after that, he got up and went off to work. I, too, decided to go to work, so I got in the burgundy Acura and was on my way. While I was driving to work, I was afraid to look at cars coming in the opposite direction. I was afraid that I would see Len's face again. Okay, so you didn't get this part, but as I'm reading, there was one occasion that I was driving and I saw his face on someone else's face. It was crazy. It was demonic. It was horrendous. Okay, so I would glance and turn my head away swiftly. During my 30-minute drive, I could still smell the barn-like odor. When I arrived at work, I was self-conscious because I thought that everyone could smell that stench on me. As I sat at my desk, the smell grew stronger and stronger. I could not concentrate on work. I sat in fear, but no one could tell, although I believed that Darla, a co-worker who was not a witness, discerned that something was wrong with me. When lunchtime arrived, I drove to the shopping mall 10 minutes up the road to get away. As I walked around the mall, the pong followed me. I could not escape from this foul odor. It was overwhelming. It was all pervading, but no one could smell it except for me. Later, when we were saved from the pit, my children informed me that they never smelled that stench at all, not even at Len's house. I walked up and down the corridor of the mall, trying to get away from that dreadful odor. I walked into a wicker furniture store and sat helplessly on a chair. The smell was still growing strong. I was frightened, bewildered, and exhausted from not sleeping at all that night before. I was trying to gather my thoughts and make sense of this madness. What is this smell? Where is it coming from? The only thing I was certain about this repulsive stench is that it was of a wicked nature. It was evil. I got up and left the store. I didn't want to draw too much attention to myself. I continued to pace the corridor back and forth to help me think. Think! There was a payphone at one end of the corridor near the entrance. I walked over to it and placed a call to my job telling them that I wasn't feeling well and I would not be returning to work that day. That was actually the last day that I entered the building of that workplace. While standing at the payphone, after making the call, I gazed down at my wedding ring. Maybe it's this ring. Maybe there is evil attached to it. I took both rings off, band and diamond, and placed them on the ledge under the phone. The payphone, that is. Yes, the beautiful diamond that I had described to you earlier. I was apprehensive about doing so as it was valuable, but my life was more valuable. I left the mall and my rings behind. I left my rings, my wedding band and my diamond at the mall under the payphone. Just left them there. I thought that's where the smell was coming from. I wanted to get rid of that smell. I left the mall and my rings behind. I drove home in extreme distress. When I arrived, I entered the house. I wanted to leave that house forever. I called my mom and asked if my dad could pick me up. She said that he was out, but when he returned, he could come and get me. I was impatient. I wanted to leave immediately. I called Sophie to ask her if she could pick me up. She was not available. Then I called Len. Len, I came home from work, I said. Oh, are you okay? He asked. I can't stay here anymore. I'm leaving, I said. I'm going back to my mother's house. No, don't do that, he said firmly. Just wait until I get home. We will talk. No, I can't. I have to leave now, I exclaimed. After we hung up, I began to think about my kids. I definitely didn't want them coming to this house, so my next phone call was to the school giving firm instruction for my children to get off the bus at their grandmother's house today. Shortly after that, there was a knock on the door. It was Len's mother. As she walked in, I backed away from her a little. In her hand, she held a single tea light candle that was mossy green and had a musty aroma. Hi, I saw your car, so I thought I'd bring you a candle, she said. Reluctantly, I opened my hand and let her place it in my palm. Why are you home today? She asked. I'm not feeling well, I answered. Oh, well, I hope you feel better, she said. She mumbled a few more lines, but I wasn't listening. I was amazed that she came over. It was eerie, very eerie. I believe that Len called her and asked her to come over to interrupt my plans to leave. It reminded me of a scene from Rosemary's Baby. She only stayed a few moments, but I was terrified. After she left, I looked at the candle suspiciously, then put it down on the entertainment center. Finally, my dad came driving up the driveway. I was so relieved. I hopped in the car with him and told him I didn't want to stay there any longer. I thought I brought a few things with me, but most of my belongings stayed behind at Len's house. I didn't go into details with him, and he didn't pry. That is how my dad was. He could go along with whatever his kids wanted. He always trusted our judgment and really questioned our decisions. Okay, actually, I'm going to stop there, page 224. Anyway, the smell continued at my parents' house, okay? It continued, and it continued to be strong. And I had all kinds of watchtower, bomb volumes, all kinds of stuff in my mother's basement. And I just kept smelling that smell. And so I knew, Jesus showed me that it was from the organization, and I knew that it was wicked. And so what I did was I took all their literature, which was demon inspired, the bomb volumes, the Watchtower magazine, all the literature. I said, I have to get this out of the basement. I have to get this out of the basement. And so we put it in the basement. We put it in my father's trunk, and we drove to the dump and just dropped it all off at the dump and came back. After that, with every day that passed, the smell got less and less and less. And I would even go like this. I would smell my shirt. I would be like, can I still smell it? And it would just be faint, just really faint, until one day it just wasn't there anymore. The smell went away. So they were it was demon inspired. It was demonic. It was from the goats, not from Jesus and his sheep. Okay. So, and then, okay, so I've been out of that organization. Jesus saved me in 1995. Now, I've been steady learning, and a few years ago, I learned about the Baphomet, okay? And that is this horned black goat. You can look up the Baphomet. Look it up, okay? And you'll see, if you just Google Baphomet, you'll get tons of pictures of it. And it's a horned goat, and it has the as above, so below hand gestures. It has two fingers, holding two fingers up, and you'll see that a lot on television. You'll see the two fingers. They'll put two fingers. That means they pay homage to this goat figure, which is Satan, the devil. And it's androgynous. It's both male and female, and that's where transgender comes from, and all that. It's all paying homage and worshiping this goat figure, okay, which is Satan the devil. Excuse me, I'm thirsty, sorry. Okay, I had to drink some water because I've been reading and stuff. All right, so recently, I knew I learned that that goat smell was, but Jesus actually showed me what I was smelling recently, and that is why I wanted to read that to you, so that you could get in, the gist of it. And Jesus actually showed me what I was smelling at the time. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to show you the picture now. Get my phone on. All right. There was this fire. Okay, there was a fire, and it was published October 23rd, 2018 in the CBS Boston News reports. Okay, that's where this picture is taken from. You can Google it, look it up, and it is actually it's a Baptist church, First Baptist Church in Wakefield, that was burned. And it shows, and it was reported that a massive fire. Okay, I'm going to show you the picture, and then I'm going to read what the report said. So bear with me. I have to turn this around because now I'm going to show you this picture. Okay. Okay. All right. Here it is. Here is the scene of this fire. Okay. See, the church caught on fire. And it said that a massive fire ripped through the First Baptist Church in Massachusetts. Okay. And one gentleman said that he saw lightning strike the steeple. Okay, and he saw smoke. So this is